Hello and welcome. My name is Eric Wells, and I am the support group director for Recovering from Religion, and you are watching another episode of RfRx. With me today is my good friend, Kara Griffin, and she is a helpline agent for Recovering from Religion. Kara, welcome. How you doing?
Doing well. Glad to be here.
Well, folks, just like every single week, we have got a poll, and this poll is designed to kind of get you in the mindset of what we're going to be talking about today. This poll answers are anonymous. We're not going to be able to see how you answered any individual question or anything like that. I don't really even know any of that stuff. But so feel free to answer honestly. We have 4 questions today. And the first question is, do you have any regrets about your own deconstruction/deconversion process? Yes, no, I don't know, or I'm still a believer. Question number 2, did you quote unquote burn bridges with friends, family, or on social media during your angry atheist stage? Yes, no, I'm not sure. I haven't come out as a non-believer, or I'm still a believer. I think we'll talk a little bit about, because I can relate to that question. Question number 3, did your social circle change when you deconverted? No, somewhat, a lot, totally, or I'm still a believer. Question number 4, would you compare your deconversion process to a loss or a death? Yes, no, I'm not sure, or I'm still a believer. Kara, why are we here? What is RfRx all about?
Great question, Eric. So RfRx is a weekly series of talks that we have online where we have a guest come on to discuss a topic that might be relevant to folks in RFR. And today we're going to have Katherine Roberts, who we'll introduce in just a second. And we've had topics ranging from all sorts of things, from information about various religions or religious sects, to relationship and family issues, to advice about various things that might come up for people who are recovering from religion. And I'm super excited about our talk tonight. Just as a reminder, these are not meant to be a replacement for our online communities or our support groups, but they're meant to complement the conversations and discussions that we have in those communities, and to hopefully provide some good advice and coping skills for people. And if you have any questions or comments or ideas for topics you'd like to hear more about, feel free to email us about that at rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. I realized I said "at" twice, and that might have been confusing, but Eric put that in the chat, so you can find the link there. And of course, all of our previous RfRx recordings can also be found on our YouTube channel, which is also in the chat. So Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit more about RFR?
You bet. So Recovering from Religion, we will be calling it RFR for the rest of this show. RFR, we have a mission statement, and our mission is to offer hope, healing, and support to those struggling with issues of doubt and non-belief. And we have set up quite a few different programs across all of RFR to accomplish those goals. And so, Kara, let's start off with healing. How do we work towards the healing part?
Absolutely. The main way that we work towards healing is through our helpline, which is available 24/7 via either online chat or phone call. You can access it from our website at www.recoveringfromreligion.org. And there's a button there where you can log into a chat or call on the phone, whichever you prefer. And we have 24/7 trained agents there to take your calls. And we're not selling you anything. They're here to listen with an empathetic ear and not be judging or critical, but to actually listen to what you're talking about, and hopefully provide some help there and refer you to other resources, which you can also find on our website at recoveringfromreligion.org/resources. So feel free to go check those out and give us a call or a chat if you'd like to talk with someone. And then next, what we also provide is hope. And we do that through sharing and listening to personal stories. And it's you can find those either on our blog or our podcast, which those are also going into the chat. We're on medium.com/excommunications for our blog. And the podcast is recoveringfromreligion.org/podcast. And that's just kind of a place where people have been able to go and share their stories, share their struggles, their triumphs. And the idea is just that we're all in this together. together. We all encounter sometimes similar things, sometimes different things, but hopefully there might be somebody on there who's been through something that you can hear a story that you identify with and notice, hey, if they were able to get through that, that gives me some idea or some hope for myself as well. And just kind of build that sense of community that way as well. And then we have
Exactly.
Eric's favorite, support.
Yep, we've got the support. That's another way that we accomplish our mission. And we have two methods about providing support. And the first is the peer support groups, and that's the program that I'm the director of. And we have 62 groups around the world, including a virtual group to kind of be like a catch-all for folks who aren't nearby a local group. And these are face-to-face meetings, either virtual or we're starting to get a few in person, but might reconsider that down the road. But this is where the long-term healing kind of comes in. This is where if I've been struggling with something for the month, I'm able to bring it into the meeting and say, look, I've got a kid. I don't know what I'm doing. My spouse is a believer. I'm not a believer. How do we kind of handle this? And that's definitely a great question to kind of bring up in something in the support group. You can find the nearest one on our website or at the meetup link that I'll drop into the chat. In addition to that, we have set up the Secular Therapy Project. Now, the helpline is peer support. That's volunteers who are, as well as the support group. These are volunteers who are not trained professionally, don't necessarily have the tools and skills a professional mental health professional would have. And so sometimes we may need more than what just peer support can provide. And so that's where the Secular Therapy Project comes in. It's a directory that allows us as clients to log in and connect with local or nearby secular therapists who have been vetted very thoroughly by our secular therapy team. And they're vetted to make sure that they have the appropriate licensing in their state or their country, to make sure that they're maintaining a secular practice so that you won't run the risk of being proselytized to when you show up for the first or second meeting. And they're also vetted to make sure that they use exclusively evidence-based treatments. You can find all about that and set up an account at seculartherapy.org. Now, so we've talked about support. There's also an aspect that we as humans really kind of need, and it hurts when we don't have it. It's the community aspect. So Recovering from Religion has set up an online community. And this is in Slack, so it's not publicly available. You can't just search for it on Google and find it. Instead, in order to join the secular community, you need to go to the helpline and I'll either call in or chat in, and a helpline agent will ask you a few questions and see if you're a good fit. They've got a ton of different things there, including some very ex-religion specific channels or situation specific channels. Like I'm in the military, and there's a channel for military folks who are non-religious, or secular parenting channel. A lot of those things are where you're able to connect with folks who are going through similar things as you. They have Sunday night Zoom hangout meetings and things like that. So it's a lot of fun. If you're kind of out and you want to meet some like-minded folks, and I would strongly recommend the Atheist Community of Discord. They're a great community, and in fact, right now they are streaming this awesome show into their Discord server. So head on over to Atheist Community of Discord and join up with them. Great. What's next?
So volunteering. Woo, I got a big bunch of sun in my face there for a second. Let me move my camera a little bit. Okay, so volunteering. Healing can also come from helping others. And a lot of RfR volunteers, such as ourselves, find meaning and purpose in being able to do that as a volunteer for RfR. And if that's something that you might be interested in doing, we are always in need of volunteers. And there are all sorts of roles that you can fit into, whether it's being a helpline agent, which we provide training for that. You get that training. You don't have to already be a helpline agent somewhere else or anything like that. Or for the support groups, or doing things like these meetings. We have some fantastic troll smashers on here tonight who help us deal with trolls. If you have tech skills, project management skills, whatever the case may be, we probably have a need for those skills. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in doing, go to recoveringfromreligion.org/volunteer, and you can read all about what volunteering would entail. And then, yeah, at this point, let's go ahead and move on to our meeting format. Just like always, this meeting, we're doing the introduction now. We're going to introduce our speaker in just a moment, and she's going to discuss with us about tonight's topic for about an hour. And during that time, if you have any questions for her, be sure and put those into the chat. We'll be collecting those, and we'll have those at the end to ask during the question and answer session, which will be about 20 minutes or so. And so we'll be looking for those. And then at the very end of that, we'll have closing thoughts by our fabulous executive director, Gail Jordan. And then we'll move on to everyone's favorite part, the hangout session, where we turn off the recording and people can just stay and chat about whatever things you're interested in talking about this evening. So without further ado, Eric.
Yes, well, let's bring on Katherine Roberts. She is our guest tonight, and she has spent nearly 25 years as an evangelical fundamental Christian, most of those years being in some form of ministry and eventually becoming an ordained pastor. In 2018, after a long period of deconstructing from her fundamentalist beliefs, she made a skeptical examination of the evidence for the existence of God. And today, she calls herself an atheist and a freethinker. So, Katherine, welcome to RfRx. I'm so glad you're here with us today. And you're coming all the way from way out on the other side of the North American continent.
Yeah. Well, I'm really happy to be here, Eric. Thank you so much. It's so nice to see so many people, too. That's great. Yeah, I'm over on the east coast of Canada. I'm in a very tiny little fishing village in Newfoundland.
We're here to talk about rebuilding when our foundation kind of crumbles. So where would we start? Where do you want to start with this?
Well, I got a bit of experience with starting all over again. I must say, I've lived in 5 of the Canadian provinces, and I've moved almost 30 times in 30 years.
Jeez.
Yeah. A lot of people ask me if I'm in the military, but no, I just married a man with ADHD and he likes to travel. So we've lived all over. But I'd like to be able to start and tell you about the time when and I'm going to gloss over a whole lot of this story, obviously, but my husband and I found ourselves homeless back in 2000 and something. I don't even remember now. I'd have to stop and do the math. We had been ripped off by somebody from our church in a Ponzi scheme, and we lost our home, our vehicle. Wow. We lost everything. We ended up being homeless for a couple of weeks. And the way things worked out, we got a job the last minute. I mean, we had no money. We were already eating once a day. Yeah, it was pretty wild, but so we got a job that provided housing, which saved us from being homeless. But we had nothing when we started there. That was in 2008, actually. And I remember landing in this farmhouse in southern Saskatchewan with nothing. And we had been married for over 20 years at the time. And so we had accumulated all kinds of stuff. And here we were. I was sitting, we didn't even have a cup to have tea in. We had nothing. Somebody loaned us 2 lawn chairs to sit on and an air mattress. So I woke up one morning, sat in the lawn chair, and I realized this is really, really starting over, and I think about that often when I think about my own deconversion. Because that's almost how I felt when I realized that I no longer believed in God. I felt like I had nothing left. I was just sitting and wondering, what do I do next? And so it's been quite a process for me. I was a Christian since I was 28 until I was almost 50, and in the ministry for most of those years. So realizing that I no longer believed in God was just like losing everything and starting over again.
Wow, that's a
So you,
really interesting analogy that you use there. I like how you described that. Obviously, that's a horrible situation you went through. I'm sorry to hear that. But
Yeah.
that really resonates with me, that feeling of, okay, I've completely abandoned this system, but I spent the whole time in that system ignoring and specifically not trying to take on other beliefs that were contrary
Yeah.
to that belief system. And
Yeah.
then you're starting over.
I certainly didn't set out to, I never thought I'd be an atheist. Never. If somebody told me a few years ago, you know, that I'd be an atheist today, I would have just laughed at them. But I became an atheist trying to be the best Christian that I could possibly be. I mean, I just studied myself right the hell out of it. I don't know, you know, but it was it was almost like a rude awakening for me. I was okay with the deconstruction part of losing a lot of those toxic doctrines. But when I really examined the God belief and realized that I didn't have a good reason to stand on it, it was just like my world fell apart.
yeah, the whole kind of foundation, just like I feel like I experienced not the exact same thing, but like emotionally kind of went through something similar, and where I felt like I was on shifting sand and no longer a solid rock foundation. It was something completely out of left field and unexpected. I can imagine you weren't prepared for it, and I sure as heck wasn't prepared for it either.
No, it was kind of like it was like a house of cards. It was so strange that my whole life and everything that I devoted my life to and everything I believed just kind of collapsed in a moment. And I was really lost. And this is why I'm so absolutely honored to be on this show tonight, because recovering from religion was the first resource that my husband and I found online.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. Because we had no clue. We didn't know another atheist. The only people we knew were born again, spirit-filled, charismatic, non-denominational, holy rollers. So, you know, we went. I was truly lost and didn't know how to.
Yeah.
It is like a death, and that's, you know, the first thing that I found was that I had to understand and that it was a process, and it is like a grieving process. I actually was a recipient of that secular therapy project, which, I mean, if I think about it too much, I may cry. That's how life-changing it was.
Oh.
That's how life-changing it was for me, because it was my entire, like, my faith was my identity. It was my reasoning patterns. It was how I thought. It was the center of everything that I did and said. And, you know, so, you know, when it was gone, I needed therapy. And one of the things I learned in the therapy was that it is a process very similar to the grief process. I experienced the exact steps that people go through when they lose a loved one, because in a sense, and this is kind of complicated, but in a sense, you have lost someone, but at the same time, it's someone who wasn't really there, and there's like a disconnect there. My husband's therapist, which was Daryl Ray, I think it was, or he was talking to Daryl Ray, and he said, you know, my husband was saying, but, you know, I've lost this, and he said, no, you never had it. And so, but the grief is still the same. I mean, I went through shock and denial. I went through pain and depression, anger, the guilt and shame. all of the steps of grief I went through, and eventually I came out the other side, you know. So that would be my first advice to anybody who's finding themselves in the situation that I was. And I realized that a lot of people, their faith in God or their religion is really not, it's kind of an add-on to their life, you know. And so they may not experience this to the extent that I did. But I know that there's a lot of people out there who, you know, who this will relate to. I'm sure of it. So the grief process, the first thing I went through was shock and denial. I don't know how long it took me to say that I was an atheist, but I went through that shock and denial and no one to talk to. So the resources that are available online, just amazing. There's so many good ones out there. RfR being, you know, one of them, but there are a lot of really great resources out there for anybody who is going through it. The pain and depression was next. Oh, that was, I suffer with depression. I've suffered with depression all my life. And so this depression, this was completely different. But I actually, you know, and I would encourage anyone to do this. I went on medication. I went to see my doctor, and that was a big deal for me because for 20 something years, it was seen as a failure, a lack of faith to not just go see a doctor or get counseling, but to go on medication. So I suffered many years with untreated depression because of it. And there's no shame in it. If there's anybody who's listening who feels like, you know, you know, when you're depressed, there's no shame in getting help. I take other medication for other things, right? I mean, you know, lots of us take blood pressure medication, and you know, we don't feel shame over that. So
yeah, that's the exact same thing I went through too. I've struggled with depression my whole life as well. And it took, when it hit me that I no longer believed in supernatural, I fell into a 4-year-long depression, and it took a long time before I was okay with, hey, let's get some medication for this. And yeah, it's been much, much better now that I finally allowed myself to. It was a struggle at first, finding the right medication and then finding the right dose. But once that work was done, it's been well worth it ever since. And I kind of grew up similar, where, hey, this is all in your head. And so if it's in your head, you should be able to fix it. And that's just not even true, not even close to being true. I can really relate to what you're saying and what you went through.
Yeah. My family doctor talked me into going into taking the medication. And he said, if they work, you'll know in a week. And so I said, okay, I'll try it for a week. And on day 8, I woke up and I was like, oh, this is what it's like to have my own brain. This is what it's like to be able to think clearly and not have the
beautiful
clouds in your, it was unbelievable. It was almost unbelievable. And so I know, I mean, the first time I was on antidepressants, I had no idea I was going to talk about this. But the first time I was on antidepressants, I was 18. So I know that for me, I'll probably be on them forever, which is fine. If that's what, if my brain has a chemical imbalance, then I'll correct it that way. So I'm as happy as anything now. I haven't had a depressive episode one day since I started my medication. And that is fucking huge for me. It's huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And then the angry stage, atheists do get a bad rap for being angry. And I got to tell you, I definitely went through the angry atheist stage. I don't know how many of you did, but yeah, well, I was pissed. I mean, once my head
Yeah.
was on straight, I was fucking pissed. I
Yeah.
wasted 24 years of my life on fairy tales and magical thinking. And, I from 28 to 49. I didn't taste whiskey till I was 50. I never watched, you guys were talking about Star Wars earlier. I never watched Star Wars. I hardly read a secular book a secular book in over two decades. So
Except for 50 Shades of Grey, right? You read that, I'm sure. I heard like so many.
Not have been one that I read for sure then.
Yeah, the same thing here. I went through an angry atheist phase and probably lost quite a few friends and turned some of my family members sour. There were a lot of loving people who were there for me and tried to talk sense into me, but I felt so angry. I felt lied to.
Yes.
But it's not something like I couldn't pin this who lied to me.
Exactly.
My parents were just kind of raised to do this and so on and so forth. So there was nobody I could yell and scream at. So
Right.
It's made me even more angry.
Yeah, that's true. And that was, I mean, it would almost make it easier if there was somebody I could vent at, somebody, whose fault it was. But I was indoctrinated, and the people who indoctrinated me were indoctrinated. Everybody, I've said this before, but everybody I met in church circles were sincere in their belief. So I mean, I really had nobody to get mad at, but oh boy, I was mad. Which would, my next piece of advice would be to vent responsibly. You probably don't want to go on Facebook right away. And, I'm speaking from experience. This is exactly what I did. As soon as I was in that angry stage, I was like, I'm just going to tell everybody. I'm going to tell everybody that, that they're wrong. And so I started just posting all kinds of stuff on Facebook, and, I lost. I think that it's probably inevitable that I lost most of my friends anyway, because they were all, we had nothing in common anymore. But I'm sure I hurt people by being so blatantly angry, on social media. I wish I could take that back.
And it is, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kara.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it's on social media. I mean, it's hard to have a constructive conversation about almost anything, especially not something that's going to be that touchy and hit, so close to home for people. It's just, I can't figure out how to have an argument on there in any kind of productive way. So I'm like you, I just don't bother anymore.
Yeah. And, I was also, I thought everybody would want to know this new thing that I found out. I thought all of my old friends would love to know that they're believing a lie. I mean, I thought they were going to thank me, for God's sake. So, but no, not so much. Not so much. So I've learned that, people just got to get there themselves. And some, there's some people, how do I say this? There's some people that I think it would be almost detrimental to them if they did realize that they've been believing a lie for so long. Some people are, I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think some people are better off? I know what I went through when I became an atheist was very painful and confusing. And in a lot of ways, especially, our parents who, have been in church for years or whatever, I think it would be really hard for them to come out of it.
Well, and I mean, like you said, it's a process of grieving that you went through. So, I mean, it would be reasonable to expect that that's what other people might experience as well. So, yes.
Yeah,
go ahead.
it was disorienting to say the least. It was confusing and yeah.
I recognized some distinct phases in my own kind of deconversion and sorting out where I was, and you've elicited them really well, and they all did pass,
Yes.
and they kind of passed with both time and knowledge. One of the things that I did when I immediately found myself with this foundation gone was the reading and watching and listening to the people who are kind of on the other side of this, and educating myself was just my tool or my coping mechanism. And it took, and also, even though I'm really introverted and don't necessarily like to be around people, it did help me when I did find a secular community and like-minded people. Because like what you had said, your old community, you really didn't have anything in common with them anymore. And being alone for extended periods of time and just in your thoughts is can be harmful.
Yeah, that's really true. And and that kind of leads me to my next point, is that for me, a huge part of the process of my healing was giving myself permission to learn and to grow and to explore, especially the God claims and that kind of stuff, because the more I learned, well, for one thing, the circles that I came out of, we would have been afraid to look at some of these things because we would be afraid that, the devil was going to get us, basically. I mean, I just say it like that. We thought we'd fall into deception. So I never once in my life did I ever examine the evidence for the existence of God. No, I wouldn't have. Even if it crossed my mind, I would have been too afraid to do it. So that was one of the really great things, is being able to freely, learn things and look at new ideas and that kind of thing,
Yeah, isn't it interesting that they begin teaching? I mean, maybe not everyone, but in a lot of religious circles, they begin teaching at such an early age that questioning things is wrong. Don't think too hard about this.
Yeah.
That's how Satan gets you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I could just go on and on about the fear that is kind of baked right into, I guess I can't speak for all religions, but definitely baked into Christianity. I mean, you have to rub shoulders basically with other Christians. You can't forsake this. I hate quoting scripture, but I'm going to do it.
It's okay.
We used to say, well, you can't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. Well, it wasn't until I came out of church, because I had left the church a few years before I became an atheist, and not for any reason other than the fact that I was really too busy to pastor anymore. And then we retired. That's another thing. We went from homeless to retired in 9 years. So don't feel too bad about me being homeless. We retired 9 years later with 7 properties. So wow. I do know what I speak of when I talk about starting over again, I think. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so it was only like when I got out of that bubble of, because that's what it is. Church is like a bubble. It's the same indoctrination over and over. The same things are regurgitated to you. Everybody around you speaks the same way and believes the same thing, and all your friends are, so it wasn't until I got out, I forsake the assembling of myself together, that I was able to actually start the process of deconstruction, like topics like hell and that kind of stuff. But the learning part has been so much fun. I mean, it is like a great big world. I remember when I first became a Christian, I had a lot of questions because I've always been a learner. So I asked a lot of questions. Like I probably got on a lot of pastors' nerves. And I got told that I was a baby Christian. So, these questions, you just put them aside for a while. But there's no such thing as a baby atheist. So, go out and examine it, look at it. I mean, figure out why you believe what you believe and who believes what and what bases are there. I've been learning about epistemology. I mean, come on. That is fascinating. Don't you think? Do you guys watch Anthony Magnabosco?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he was on RfRx a while ago, and he's a volunteer for RFR as well, and does some of the interviews for new volunteers. And what he's been working on is just fantastic. I've loved the Socratic method, and I like his modification to it, and it's so really cool, fantastic.
He's so calm. I don't know how he does it. I'd like to be able to bottle some of that, but I get way too passionate, way too fast in these conversations.
I'm pretty sure he said it took a lot lot
Yeah.
So maybe there's hope for us all.
Yeah, kind of using his the Socratic method or street epistemology helped me ease out of that angry atheist phase as well. It helped me kind of calm down and slow down and began to just listen instead of assume, listen to where the other people are coming from instead of assume where they were coming from. And I learned a lot about other people as well, just slowing down but I wasn't at all able to do that when I was in my angry atheist phase.
No, I often wonder, I've never missed one of his shows. And I always wonder, what would I have said when I was like in the deep, up to my eyeballs in it? What would I have said if somebody had asked me? I think, there's no way to know, I suppose, but I think it probably would have blown my mind. I guess people have to it's good to give people questions, make them think about it themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's where I kind of stray from Anthony, because I'm a teacher basically, and I just want to tell you what you need to know, but
yeah, it's really hard to resist that urge. But how did that work for you, though? So when you did end up deconverting, was there a specific conversation or a moment that really resonated with you?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's such a boring story, oddly enough. I mean, it was a very casual conversation with my daughter, actually, and she's 31. And so her and her dad and myself, we were, am I allowed to say, listen, I'm Canadian and weed is legal here. So I'm just going to say, so we were smoking a joint and we were just talking about all kinds of, I don't know, interesting, deep conversations, I suppose we were having. And she mentioned something about the simulation theory, and I had never heard of it. But it was the first time that I ever heard of it's the first time I ever heard that it's possible that we could exist without a creator God. And that was all it took. That is literally all it took, is like, because at that point I had deconstructed to the point where I knew nothing else. I knew I couldn't trust the Bible. And the only thing I had left really was, I know that there's a God, obviously, because we're here. And I know that he's good. So, I went a couple of years like that until I had this conversation, and it was like a light came on. It's like, oh, wait a second. I had no idea that other people knew or thought that we could get here other than, a creator. And that just kind of opened things up for me. And really, it seemed like everything fell into place for me. It all made sense. And then I started looking at the evidences for the supernatural, and realized, no, I was hoodwinked for 24 years.
Wow, that's so interesting. All it took was like pulling that one string of,
Yes, exactly.
yeah,
The
and that's all unraveled.
deconstruction part took years, like literally years.
Mhm.
But that deconverting from that God belief, that pretty much happened almost overnight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It sounds like you said, you'd been thinking about it, chewing on it a lot, probably in your head before that point. And that was just,
All of the finer points of religion I had always thought about. That's when when I said that I was trying to be the best Christian that I could be, and I ended up as an atheist. And that's, that is really what happened. But for the life of me, I don't remember a time in my life until that day that I ever considered that there may not be a God behind everything. It just didn't
yeah.
occur to me.
Yeah. Well,
And I don't
Catherine,
think
why
it's
should
that
it?
unusual. Yeah.
No, they teach that.
And we're all indoctrinated if you live in North America, you're indoctrinated to some point, to some extent. You can't turn on the TV, but, you hear people talking about God bless and, all kinds of stuff. So, yeah. Yeah.
now before you move,
It's not all bad, because I have like a friggin' wonderful life now. It's been almost 4 years, and that whole learning, that is what helped me. Because here's the thing: for years, like I said earlier, my identity was, we used to call it in Christ, and we were really big on positive confession and stuff too. So, who I was somehow attached to this God figure that I worshipped. And when it was gone, I didn't know who I was. I really didn't. I didn't know my own morals, really. The morals I have
yeah,
now
yeah.
are so different than it was a few years ago, you know?
Yeah.
Now, Catherine, before we move on, would you mind making the distinction between deconverting and deconstruction? Would you mind making that distinction?
Sure. Well, first I got to say, I got a flashback. I thought for sure you were just going to ask me to pray.
No.
Before we begin, let's all bow our heads.
With every head bowed and every eye closed. Oh boy. I may not even be using these terms properly. I don't know. But for me, I've learned that I used to say that I deconverted or deconstructed from Christianity, but I've learned that to a lot of people, that means that they still have the God belief, but they're deconstructing their theology or their doctrine, basically. And I found that out the hard way, because I thought everybody who said that they were deconstructing was atheist like me. So, but no. And so that's why I started saying deconstruction and deconverting, because I did, the deconstruction part first, and then deconverting to atheism. Although that sounds like too much, like, you kind of, it's almost like before, like I got saved and converted to Christianity. It's not like that, but it's, I guess it's the best term that there is going out there. I don't like saying that I lost my faith, because I didn't lose a friggin' thing. I gained reason.
Yeah.
I didn't lose anything.
I kind of see it as like we have, when we're believers, we've constructed this whole worldview from day one until day when we no longer believe. And for me, the deconstruction part was when I was thinking about my old beliefs and then examining them, like, okay, what can I do to make a determination on whether or not this belief has any fixed like hold in reality? Is it true or not? And the deconverting was then kind of like a whole shift in a belief system from religious to non-religious. And that's kind of the distinction I made, was like deconstruction was thinking about my old belief system. Deconverting was the actual shift between the two.
Right,
I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but
yeah, it does completely. It does completely. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, and then someone in the chat was asking, so what is the reconstruction piece of it? What are you reconstructing there?
Well, oh, my entire worldview, has been reconstructed. Like I mentioned about morals, I didn't realize that my morals were not really my morals, if that makes sense. I just believed I had morals to believe the Bible, whatever the Bible says. So, which is why,
So you were saying like they weren't yours, like they were something that you just took on without thinking.
Yeah. Well, I was indoctrinated to believe. Well, for example, the Bible is not too fond of gay people. So, for many years, I believed that, that it was unnatural, it was a sin. And so that was my morals. But come to find out, I have no problem with it at all. I have no problem with it. It's, yeah, so there's so much that changed from, but it really has been a reconstruction. But at the same time, it's also just learning to live. Oh boy, it's so hard to explain. I don't have to rely on an external source like the Bible or prayer or whatever to come to my own conclusions, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
To live my life.
Yeah.
I am free to live my life with my thoughts and my morals and my decisions. I get to go where I want to go, and be friends with whoever I want to be friends with, that kind of thing. So yeah.
And there's, in some sense, I feel like what you're describing, there's a bit of freedom in that too. Like when I was in my old religious system, it was inflexible. There wouldn't change at all, no matter how society changed, no matter how our culture changed. I couldn't change my morals, or I couldn't change my worldview. But now that I'm out of it, I have the freedom to, while I'm deconstructing my belief system, I have the freedom to change my mind. Yeah.
To have a say, that's big for me. Maybe just being as a woman, especially a woman who was in ministry. I mean, I played, the boys' game for a long time. I was the only friggin' woman in a lot of friggin' rooms for a long time. And
yeah,
so,
when you told us you were an evangelical minister, how did you manage to pull that off, if you don't mind me asking? Because, like you said, it's a boys' club, and of course they're not going to let you teach them.
Yeah, it was. It certainly wasn't overnight. I mean, I became a Christian in 1996. 1996. And I started kind of in ministry right away. I started doing puppet shows and Sunday school. Well, the puppet shows, first of all, I can't just gloss over the puppet shows because
you cannot.
Do you still have these puppets? Can we see them?
But I wish I did. I so wish I did. There was one that was like a heart. There was a Holy Spirit. We had the devil. Anyway, I used to write the puppets.
Yeah. Did you have like the Lamb of God shop?
We did. We did. But listen, of all of the things that happened to me in my Christian walk, I think doing the puppet shows with the kids was like, I'll never be sorry for that. I'll never regret that moment, because there's nothing like the pure joy of watching children who believe that puppet on your hand is actually friggin' talking to them. And it's just so sweet. So yeah, I started off very early in my Christian walk, and I started getting asked to speak at different places. And so, I've preached at women's ministries and conferences, lots of different churches, women's groups, that kind of thing. But I even wrote Bible studies. I taught Bible studies. I was an associate pastor and a youth pastor, but boy, that senior pastor really, really was like a carrot on a stick for me for many, many years. It took a lot. I had to do, I did some Bible school, and I had to get like letters of reference and all that kind of stuff. I didn't get ordained until 2013 from 1996. The organization, the denomination that I was with was okay with ordaining women,
Huh.
and which a lot of churches do. I mean, like the rest of the Bible, it's all open for interpretation, and a lot of churches do, interpret it a lot. I had I could give you the whole biblical lesson on why I was allowed to be a female pastor. I could back it up with scripture, but now I just don't care.
Yeah. And that's so interesting too, especially in like the evangelical and fundamentalist circles, where kind of the argument is that the Bible must be taken literally. Whatever it says is what we have to go by. But there's still so much room then for people to decide which passages to make say what they want, or something opposite of that, and which ones they decide are, no, that's the one we're definitely taking literally, and we're not going to discuss that.
Yeah. That's true. That is so true. And I mean, there's so many verses in the Bible that are really troublesome, but everybody manages to work their way around it, So, I mean, I had people leave the church when I got ordained, of course, but that was okay. And I wasn't really treated, probably shouldn't say this, but, like my denomination would have pastors' meetings, but it would just be for the men, and I would get invited to the pastors' wives' meetings, and I'd be like, hello, you do know that I'm the pastor, right? But
oh wow.
Yeah. But that was okay. It was the culmination of everything that I had worked towards to become a pastor. I was beyond thrilled to do it. I never would have thought that just a few years later I'd be an atheist.
So you had mentioned that you felt like you had lost time when you kind of began to this deconstruction, this deconversion process. How did you kind of deal with that? Like because I have some regrets, and I know that I've caused some damage, and I've tried to make up for it for doing this kind of work. What did you go through?
Yeah, the guilt is probably the guilt of some of the things that I believed or taught or said to people may always bother me. I do have a lot of regrets that way, especially when it comes to the gay people that I met along the way. I remember specifically two separate times I tried to pray the gay away from a couple of men who were part of our congregation. And that makes me feel like it's just so disgusting now. But someone told me, I don't know who it was now, but someone told me just to keep focusing, when I feel that guilt, to keep focusing on the intention that I had, because I was never a mean person. I was never a hateful person. I raised two gay kids myself. So my intentions were always loving. I was always sincere, but holy smokes, I was very sincerely wrong in a lot of those cases. And I'll never be able to make up for those things. I did become a marriage commissioner since becoming an atheist, and I only do secular weddings. And I do any of the weddings in the gay community, I do for free. So that will never come near to like a drop in the bucket, even of telling one person. I regret telling even one person that was gay that it was wrong. But I enjoy doing the weddings for sure. But the learning about myself has been the best. I mean, it's like almost like seeing the world for the first time. I had a very, very strict view of things for so long. I never watched a horror movie, and I've discovered I love horror movies.
What's your favorite horror movie so far now that you've watched them?
There's two on Netflix called damn, I can't remember. I can't remember. That's my age.
Okay.
I'll remember it in about 10 minutes and I'll just blurt it out.
Blurt it out. Yeah.
In the middle
Hopefully
of
it's something
else.
real weird sounding, so it
Yeah.
won't make any sense until we realize
Yeah.
that's what you're saying.
Now, I don't like horror movies with like demons, like the possession and those bore the shit out of me because I know
Oh,
it's,
wow.
it's not scary at all.
Did you ever do exorcisms? Were you ever involved in
Yeah.
anything like that?
Oh yeah, deliverance. Yeah, that was like one of my main gifts was deliverance. I thought I delivered all kinds of people from all kinds of stuff.
Oh, tell us more. I want to hear about this.
Oh my goodness gracious. I've seen people throw up in church because, you know, we were doing deliverance and you just hand them a bucket. And we believe that sometimes you vomit out demons. Yeah. Hello, Glenda. I just woke up, Glenda. Look, she's like, what? It's true, Glenda. It's true. It's true. I thought we vomited up demons into the garbage can. I don't know what we did with them after.
Oh,
we flushed them
you
down
thought the
toilet.
demons? You thought the demons came out with the vomit?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I always saw like this. The demons is like this ethereal thing that could just come in and out and pass through you like a cloud or something. I never considered them being able to come out in the vomit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Or sneezing or coughing. We believed all that kind of stuff. We were really like in Pentecostal circles. There's a demon behind everything. There's a demon everywhere. You got to watch where you're freaking sitting when you're Pentecostal because you could sit right on a demon.
Yeah.
Gone to people's homes. People have called me and said they were having trouble with their husband or their kid or whatever. And I would go to their home with my anointing oil and pray over their room and anoint the doorposts of the house. And yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
And how would you know?
It's so embarrassing. It's so
worked?
embarrassing. I'm sorry, Kara.
Oh no, I was just asking. How would you know if it had worked? Like,
that's a good question. I guess if they threw up, no.
okay, well, you know, then it helps to have a physiological indicator that something has happened.
Yeah, we used to just pray and pray and pray and pray. I mean, we were Pentecostal, so we prayed a lot. And, you know, usually, I don't know how we would know it was done. I guess the shrieking and the screaming and the falling on the floor was over.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, we had that in my school too, growing up. So I get it. And that was one of the ways that they would convince kids as well that, you know, this has to be true. Look at all of the demons that we've cast out.
Oh my God, Kara, that reminds me of, oh my Lord. Oh, the regret. Yeah, my daughter would have sleepovers. I remember one time in particular, she had a sleepover when she was little, and all of the girls, they were all from the church. They all thought they saw a demon. So, you know, here's mom to the rescue to come up, and I encouraged them. I said, oh, okay, so you've seen a demon. It was nothing. I thought it was real. You know, when we prayed over it and stuff, and oh, Jesus, wouldn't I wish I could go back in time and tell those poor little sweet girls to go to sleep that there's no demon out there.
Yeah.
It sounds so much like the beginnings of the Salem witch trials back in the 17th century, where these young girls thought they saw demons. But this kind of really does go back to dealing with our own guilt and embarrassment of some of the damage we did, the stupid things that we did, the stupid thoughts we had that we thought were real back there. And how do you kind of work through that?
I mean, my face probably went red when I was just saying that. That's how embarrassed I am now. Right. I consider, well, I know I'm an intelligent educated, articulate human. I wrote the entry exam for Mensa when I was 35, just for shits and giggles. So I'm not a dummy. And yet I have rolled on the floor and felt pains that I thought that we all said we were travailing in the spirit. None of you know what that is.
No, we didn't have that. What is travailing in the spirit?
We believe that the Holy Spirit could birth something through you, and so you could get pains just like, stop looking at me like that, Kara.
I'm just imagining that scene in Alien when the chest burster comes out, and I was briefly horrified.
Yeah, no, it's true. As embarrassing as it is, that is 100% true. Yeah.
That's such an important point, though, that you bring up, that, it doesn't mean that someone is stupid because they have a religious belief. Like
right.
Anybody who's deconverted, you kind of have to recognize that, okay, I was fooled by this for whatever reason. It's not an intellectual disability, that we're dealing with. There's a lot more going on than that. And that probably goes a lot towards, being able to get out of that angry atheist stage as well, perhaps. Having
yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
I wonder if the part of the angry atheist phase that I went through was a reaction to some of the regret and the guilt that I had too. I'm wondering if there was a little bit in there or a lot in there as I was kind of working through it myself.
Yeah. For sure, because like we said earlier, there's really nobody to be mad at. I think it's funny that people think I'm mad at God. I wish I was just mad at God. I'm just not. And to speak to what Kara was just saying, I hear a lot of atheists now refer to Christians or other theists as, stupid, basically, and it's just not true. I didn't get any smarter when I became an atheist. I just started thinking differently. So it really isn't a function. Even I do find that when people find out that I am from like a fundamental background, that carries more of a stigma of not being very smart. Yeah. Because the beliefs are so outrageously strange, I suppose.
Having a belief in something has nothing to do with intelligence, as you so well put it. I feel one of the traps that I fell into early in my deconversion process was thinking I could logically talk someone out of their belief system that they got into in an emotional basis, and just never worked. And it was tilting at windmills, trying to use logic and reason to talk to someone out of their beliefs with they got into it emotionally.
Yeah. And when I came out of the angry atheist stage, I suppose, or at some point, I just really embraced learning. And that's probably the best advice I could give anybody who's coming out of religion, or especially like, the high control, high demand religion that I came out of, is explore the world. It's such a big, beautiful world. I am shocked at how small my world was for 2 decades.
Wow.
Very, very small. Yeah. And there are, I joke about whiskey, but that's just it's so bigger than that. It's bigger than whiskey and horror movies. And it is about freedom and excitement. And I only have one life to live. I'm 53, and by God, I'm gonna live it the best that I can. I'm not, listen, if everybody's on board and everybody is happy and I'm not hurting anybody, I'm gonna try whatever I want to do. I want to experiment life. I want to experience life. I want every day I want to squeeze out every bit of goodness out of every day. Mm-hmm. I don't have a heaven to go to. I don't have a heaven to go to when I'm dead. This is it. This is my life. Right. And it's wonderful.
Oh,
Yeah, you,
absolutely. Yeah, that reminds me of, when I was in, Pentecostal school, all of the time they would tell us these things, you're not allowed to do anything, everything is, we're boycotting Disney, we're boycotting 7-Eleven, everything we're boycotting all the time. And, then they would have these services where they would talk about things like, oh, well, if you're ever feeling like your life is boring or you need more excitement in your life or more freedom to do things, that's an indication that your conscience is telling you that you need to get closer to Jesus. And I never
Yeah.
got what that meant because it just never made sense to me. But then after leaving the religion, I realized, oh no, we just actually were missing out on all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to be almost terrified of the world. That's what it was called. We called it the world. We couldn't be worldly. And it almost sounds like I was, wearing a bonnet and a long dress or something. It wasn't that bad, but at the same time, it kind of was. It kind of was. I was told who I am, what I believe, what my morals are, what's right and what's wrong, and finding out that none of that is relevant anymore is actually very freeing. Yes, it was the most painful thing that I've ever gone through, and it really is the most. And like I said, I've been homeless. I've suffered depression. I've been through a lot in my life, but deconverting from Christianity was the hardest, but the most rewarding. I wish I had never gotten involved in it, but I wish that I had found reason a lot earlier than I did.
I don't feel that we can really have appreciation or even elation if we never experience sadness or heartbreak or the tough times. So it's kind of shitty to say, well, it made you stronger. But on the other hand, if you hadn't have gone through what you've gone through, if I hadn't have gone through what I've gone through, I could not have helped. I don't feel like I could have been as effective or empathetic to the people that I talk to that are struggling and to come out of it and have their own doubts and stuff. Yes, it was traumatic. Yes, there were people who also had been through that helped me. And now in turn, I get to turn around and be the one for them or be one of them for those folks too.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing. Yeah.
The way you had painted how you saw the world or how you were told to see the world with demons in the basement that children were seeing, or demons coming in when you're sneezing or coughing and coming out when you're vomiting. Like I was getting afraid. That is a scary, scary world. And when you kind of came out of it, was it difficult for you to embrace or try new things? Because it sounds like you might have still experienced the world as being super scary.
I did not actually. Once I got through therapy for religious trauma syndrome, which, I definitely needed. Once I got through that, I actually lost fear. Like, I used to be afraid even to be in the house by myself, or spend the night by myself. I was really afraid of demons. I mean, you could see them at any time, for goodness sake, So, not even just the fear of hell, but like all of those fears are gone now. I mean, I really live in the woods. This is my window. There, it is black right there, black, and. I could go outside. I'm not afraid that demons are going to come and,
That's cool.
crawl out of the ground and grab me or something. And I wasn't afraid to try new things. I have had 4 years of trying all kinds of new things. Some of them I can't even tell you, Eric.
I don't know, we talk about a lot on this show.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Well, you kind of want to feel like you can summarize some of the tips that you tossed out throughout this conversation, just in a little bit of a conclusion. And why don't you want to summarize that?
Yeah, sure. I would say the first thing is to realize that, especially if you're coming out of something as deep as I was, that it is a process, and you're going to have to do some work, but it is so much worth, it is so worth it. So there is a process. Being aware, being cognitive that there's a process, and that is very similar to grieving, will actually help you be a lot gentler on yourself, and so there's that. And then give yourself permission to learn. Give yourself permission to learn all of those religious things that you weren't allowed, because I found that the more I learned, the more confident I was that I'm not wrong now, if that makes sense. I've been 4 years basically talking about God and asking people for their proof. And the more I do, the more I realize I feel pretty good about my standing in life, So give yourself permission, and then explore. Just have fun, find out who you are, explore things. I mean, I took up all kinds of hobbies. I took up painting. I never painted in my whole life. Darts. I mean, just little things, but those kinds of things too will help you with your new social circle, because 9 chances out of 10.
Oh, that's a fantastic point.
Scratch. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point.
Yeah. That was so important to me too. Just other things to do with other humans. And things like this too. But
absolutely.
But yeah, that's absolutely a good point. I think there are probably a lot of people who don't want to leave just because they don't want to risk losing that connection and that community. But
well, I was told, I always believed that atheists were depressed, hopeless, sad, purposeless individuals. And so that would keep somebody, I would imagine that would keep somebody, but that is just an out and out lie. It is so not the truth. I have more to live for now than I did as a Christian, because as a Christian, I could waste a lot of time because I had all of eternity. And, now I got this one.
That was what's such an incredible shift for me too. Thinking that there was an afterlife to now realizing that there wasn't. And like before I had my deconversion process, I'm like, oh, someone may need to push the reset button on this guy, and so they can either go to heaven or get reincarnated or whatever the heck goes on. But now saying something like that for me just kind of gives me the shivers. I'm like, no, Eric, that's awful to say. That's wrong, because this is all that we've got. And life became so much more precious to me than it was before. And I look at the stupid things that we're doing, humanity is doing in the name of religion, and the lives that are just wasted, and it makes me sad, and it pushes me to make the most out of my life as well.
Yeah. I'm going to just tell you this one short little story. One of the very last times I went to church, I was visiting a church because it was in a different province from where I was pastoring. And they had a piece of string tied from one end of the sanctuary to the other. That's a fairly big sanctuary. And somewhere at the beginning of that, they had this tiny little, not even a sticky note, but the little sticky tabs that you use, like when you need to sign a document. They had one of those on this string that stretched across. And the whole message was, that little sticky note is your life, and the rope is eternity. So, yeah. And so, right.
Wow.
What you need to do is suffer. Well, I don't know if they didn't use the word suffer, but you sacrifice, and you do, everything on that little tiny sticky note that determines your whole life. And it's just not like that. Life is so, I don't even know the words. It feels like a whole new life opened up to me. And you don't even realize it you don't realize it when you're in it. I thought we used to sing a lot about being free. I mean, we used to like jump around and dance and clap in church and talk about how free we were, hallelujah. But it's so restrictive. I don't know how you can, well, I guess I do, you're indoctrinated, but now life is beautiful.
I think in some sense, and maybe for some people, there is freedom inside that cage. Like you may feel protected from the scary outside world, but once that cage door is opened and you kind of walked out, like the world is so much more, it's so much bigger, and so many more possibilities. Even it's weird to say this, but the world also became brighter to me, like more exciting, and the colors seem to be shifted to just more beautiful than it was before. It's weird, totally weird, unexpected, as you well put it beforehand.
Yeah. I found that I had a new appreciation for nature, because I didn't have to attribute it to a God. You know what I mean? I have a new appreciation for humans. I realize that I am a part of a human species. And for so many years, I was in a us and them kind of mindset. That's what Christianity does, right? You're a sinner or a saint, you're lost or you're saved, you're going to heaven, you're going to hell. Everybody was a project to me. And now I don't have that. I see people for who they are. Like, everybody has their own shit they're going through, right? Everybody has ups and downs and, hurts and joys. Everybody is the same. We're all, and we're all connected. There is no us and them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Catherine, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, and I'm really glad to have had this topic about rebuilding and kind of what to expect when you don't expect coming out, deconverting. Before we kind of move on to the Q&A, do you have any final thoughts or final words?
No, but again, I thought you were going to ask me closing prayer that time. No, I don't have any questions, but I'm thrilled to have been here, and I'm really looking forward to if anybody has any questions for me.
Well, before we move on, it's been 13 years since you kind of first started doubting the existence of God, and you still have these initial reactions of like, you're going to pray. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, it hasn't really been 13 years, but listen, as a pastor, you know that if you are in any kind of public situation, you're going to get asked to pray.
Okay.
And
Got
so, yeah, every meeting, every meal, every potluck.
I think that maybe something else that people might not expect is to have these kind of old ingrained reactions to certain situations or certain phrases. Like, it took me a long time to break out of that habit of saying God bless you, or even bless you when somebody sneezes. Sure, you can say it, but that just doesn't make sense to me anymore. If I was a Pentecostal, I think it would make perfect sense.
Yeah, now we know that's how the demons
someone
get
messaged me. Oh, sorry, Kara.
Oh, no, I just said that's how the demons get in, so it makes a lot more sense now.
It's true. Actually, no, the demons get in by your own fault.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
bad that happens is your fault. Everything good that happens is God's fault. That's another thing that I've learned, is that it's amazingly wonderful to be able to take credit for your own victories and achievements.
Yes, that's so true. Because it is like you said, there's no shortage of people saying, you must have a sin in your life, even if you don't know what it is yet. Nobody knows what it is. There must be a sin you're doing, if anything goes wrong. But yeah, you're right. You can't take credit for anything because God did
I
it.
heard a sermon one time, and this preacher was saying that you can't expect God to anoint you and use you if your car is dirty. And I'm like, oh shit.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of pressure.
That's the thing. There's always, it's exhausting, because you always have to be introspective, and but I'm getting off on another topic now. Somebody close the
Catherine.
door before I start preaching again.
Catherine, thank you so much for joining us this
Thanks
evening.
for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much. Carrie, you want to take the questions and start us
Sure.
off? If you've got some questions for Catherine, both here in Zoom or in the Discord, we're monitoring both of those places, so feel free to ask them there.
Yeah. And so we have had a few questions come in so far, so I'll start with those. One person was wondering, was it hard to tell your family that you had become an atheist? And
Yes.
when did you just to let them know that?
Yeah, it was very hard to tell my family. Luckily, my husband and I deconverted at the same time. That's a whole new level of hurt that other people had that I never had. Sorry, what was your question again, Karen?
Oh, yeah, no, that's okay.
Yes.
Was it hard to tell your family?
Yeah, it was. I sent my family, and we have like a family chat, right, on Messenger. We've had for years. So that's where I dropped that bomb. Because I thought it would be easier to just say, okay, here's this thing that happened to me. I don't believe in God anymore, but I really don't want to talk about it. And really, nobody talked about it. To this day, I have not had very many people that I've met in my ministry in the years of being a Christian. Not very many people have asked me what happened. So I didn't really have a whole lot like that to face. I did have one lady just found out recently, and she messaged me and said, I can't believe that you're doing that, and I'll never leave. I'll never turn my back on my Lord, and that kind of thing. But
wow. But as far as your immediate family, that it wasn't, they weren't particularly shocked or upset by it.
No, my kids were all adults. I have 3 grown kids. They were atheists before me. Like I said, my daughter is kind of the one who was kind of the the person who I had the conversation with. So now that's not to say that we haven't had our issues, because my kids were raised in a very strict home. So this is very new to them. It's been a lot to work through there as well. But they didn't feel betrayed, by my lack of faith in God anymore. And so I don't think there were too many people to really be that upset. I know that probably most people are just like really shocked. People who know me are shocked, but I don't think anybody's been really hurt by it. I shouldn't say that. I my dearest and closest best friend for 20 something years, that whole friendship has completely changed. So I suspect that, it's hurtful to her. I led a lot of people, to the Lord, and then to turn around and say, hey, that thing I said back then, forget that. So, yeah.
And that's, I don't know, it sounds like almost like it could have been a scary situation in almost the opposite direction. Like, were you afraid that there would be people saying, I told you so, we've been telling you this for years?
I genuinely expected, I did expect more of a pushback from people, but at the same time, in that angry atheist stage, I kind of burned bridges with pretty much anybody. I took anybody who was a Christian, I took off Facebook at some point. I just, because I couldn't, there was a time when I couldn't stomach seeing the Christian stuff coming up on people's news feeds. So as soon as I saw it, I would just like delete. But yeah, it really, it really hasn't, other than the fact that my entire social circle has changed. I wouldn't say that most people were angry over it.
Okay, well, that's great.
We've got another, seems to be fairly Pentecostal based. Number one, did you ever speak in tongues? And number two, did you
Hallelujah.
ever handle snakes?
Well, listen, you cannot be Pentecostal if you don't speak in tongues. That's the whole friggin' thing. So, yes, it was that was another one of my main gifts was I taught on the baptism of the Holy Spirit and speaking in tongues, and even in other churches, I've written Bible studies on it. And yeah, the snake handling was never, I think that's more of an American Pentecostal thing, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's Southern.
Yeah.
Yeah, no snakes up here in Newfoundland anyway, so.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's
Did
probably cold.
did St. Patrick drive him out of Newfoundland too?
Yeah, probably.
That's great. Okay, we've got another one here. Someone was wondering, did you always buy into the belief 100%, or was there something at the back of your mind that kind of said, something doesn't seem quite right, but I'm just going to go along with it anyway?
Right. That's a really great question. And I can say without a doubt that I believed it hook, line, and sinker. There may have been doctrinal points that I wasn't really kind of sure about. Like hell was always never really sat well with me because I couldn't figure out why, if God loves us so much, why he would do that. But, as far as like everything I preached, I believed 100%. And I did, I believed it all. I don't think there was ever a time other than, like I said, just some doctrinal points, but no, I thought I was right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's I really never even took the time to examine it. Like, of course I'm right. I've seen proof of it, and of course all the people who are my senior have told me it's true. And so why would I doubt them? It never really occurred to me to doubt. I asked questions, but and those questions started to be weirder and weirder. But in the thick of it, no, I was just sailing on what other people told me.
Yeah. I was fully indoctrinated, and it's like you said. I mean, it was there were a lot of wonderful, loving, intelligent people, and for a lot of times, when I was at the very beginning stages, when I was a Christian, a baby Christian, I kind of would think to myself, well, this doesn't make sense to me, but these people obviously know what they're talking about. I mean, they've gone to school, they're talking about it. So eventually I will understand it. And so that's how I quelled my questions for a long time, and they were mostly like questions like, how did Jonah really live in a whale for, 3 days and then end up right there at Nineveh where he's supposed to preach, things like that. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. All right, we got 2 more questions here. I'm going to read this one kind of verbatim for you. The theology I had was very focused on God making everything right at the end, whether at the end of time or just conceptually in the afterlife. I'm finding it hard to replace that old hope based on magic with something based in reality. What advice would you give this person?
Oof, interesting. Yeah, that is really great. I don't know. I mean, I feel more hopeful about the future now than I did, when I felt that Jesus was in control of it all. Because I think, maybe you do feel like you need to, what am I trying to say here? Eric, read the question again.
So I can really relate to this question. when I was a believer, I could feel like this horrible person is doing horrible things to someone I care about or someone in the world, and I'm powerless to do something about it. But I know a guy who knows a guy, and they'll be able to take care of this. It was almost like there was this ledger book, and it was always being kept in balance in some way. Like this person will get it in the end, or the horrible things that are going on are only temporary because this is part of a plan, and it's going to be okay in the end. So, and leaving that belief system, I now see that it's just us, and these are horrible people doing horrible things to innocent people, and I'm still powerless to do anything about it in most cases. So how do you, or how would you advise someone to deal with that and work through that?
I think for me, like just looking at things logically, taking a rational stand, which is a big deal for me, because I went, to prayer for, every situation. But knowing that I have a say in the direction of my life actually gives me hope. Because yes, it might be nice to have God as a crutch who's going to work it all out in the end. But at the same time, that same God then is still, in charge of your life, kind of thing, and I think being able to think things through myself and use my own common sense has actually given me confidence, which in turn is hopeful for the future, because I didn't know that I could do these things. And as far as people doing terrible things, well, God's not going to fix it. It's up to us as humans to get involved and fix things, and to be socially active, and that kind of thing. So leaving it up to God is not going to get the job done. So I hope that makes sense.
And in some sense, I feel like in the past, I would pass the responsibility on to somebody else. Like, okay, it's not my problem. I'll just let this supernatural being kind of take care of it. And that sort of mentality sort of seeped into a lot of my everyday life, where it's not my responsibility. I can just stand back, even if I can do something about it. Once I came out of the old belief system, it was really hard to square the idea that there is a plan, and then also the idea that there's a free will, that we have free will. Because if there's a plan, then my life is on rails. But if there's free will, then I can kind of have a say in the outcome. And so looking back and holding those two thoughts in my head at the same time, it was just something that I think a lot of believers do going around in the world.
But finding out that you can be a good person without a God belief, or that you can make intelligent decisions, you can handle your own shit, basically, you can handle your own life, is a very empowering feeling. Christianity in a lot of ways makes us very, can make us very childish, but yeah, for me, I found that it was almost like growing up. It's kind of hard to explain growing up at 50, but I really love knowing that I am in control of my life, and that I can be a decent, moral, good person without God.
I do like your analogy with being children, because that's exactly what we would do. Is as a kid, I would my parents would take care of stuff, and I wouldn't necessarily, yes, I'd get in trouble for doing some crappy things, but my parents would, for the most part, take care of my basic needs. And if something came up, in my life, they would be the ones that I could fall back on, and they would take care of it for me. So I do really like that analogy, because I felt the same way when I, as an adult and as a believer.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially this kinds of things that I believed. I mean, like I said, they're almost, it's almost so, I don't, childish is not the right word, but it is so unbelievable that it almost makes you feel like, well, I mean, I was deluded for
Yeah.
a long time. That's hard to accept. But yeah, I'd never go back. I'll never go back. I can't imagine. I guess if somebody, if somebody could convince me, if somebody could show me that there's a God. I mean, I don't know if I'd ever go back to church, but and I don't know if I would ever give control of my life to that God again.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it's true, I'd certainly love to find out, and then I can make a decision with my own brain about what I'm going to do with that information.
And in some sense, this childlike behavior or view that we had, would contribute to rediscovering the world anew as we come out of it. Because you described how you were exploring new things and felt like the world was all brand new. And as a support group leader, being able to meet with people every month or so, I get to see the same thing in so many people. I'll never forget a woman who came in and was heavily indoctrinated into a cult, and she, 1 week after a few weeks of being there, 1 week she comes in and is like, I wore pants for the first time today, and I tried pepper for the first time today. This stuff is amazing. I got to kind of see the world anew through her eyes too, and it was really uplifting for me, and I kind of was along for her ride too. It was really neat to see people rediscover the world.
Yeah, it's too bad that in 2021 there are still people who think that eating pepper is sinful. And I can't laugh at it, because I believe that people were vomiting up demons into the garbage of the church. But more and more people, I think it's with the resources and information that we have available now. When I became a Christian, we personally didn't have internet. There was no such thing as YouTube. I couldn't look up things. But in this day and age, there's a lot of great resources out there, and if people could step away from the fear of getting deceived, to really be able to examine things, it's just such a much more full life, a much bigger life.
Yeah, and on that note, we have one more question. We actually have several more questions, but we'll try and keep ourselves on track this time, and I'll just ask you one more question about sort of expanding our horizons into new things. Someone was wondering if you have any suggestions for meeting non-religious people, besides obviously at RFR, once you've come out of that situation.
Yeah, that's now that's a thing where I am. That's very difficult. Well, first of all, I live in a town with maybe 50 people. So I can guarantee you my husband and I are the only atheists here.
Wow.
And, so if somebody's in a bigger city, there are lots of secular meetup groups and stuff to do. I find most of my community online, just because of where I live. I mean, I would love to be able to, meet in person with people. But finding new interests and hobbies and stuff, and getting out there and doing stuff. I think that would come, kind of flows out of that.
Mm-hmm. And I guess if you pick a hobby that you wouldn't have been allowed to do previously, maybe you're more likely to meet other like-minded people.
Yeah. it's hard finding friends when you're a middle-aged woman and not a kindergartner is very difficult. It took a concerted effort. Listen, people probably thought I was weirder looking for friends than I was coming out of religion, because I was shameless. Shameless looking for friends.
That's great.
I have you don't have like a little notepad that says, will you be my friend? Yes, no, maybe. And like,
Circle one.
yeah.
Yeah. But where I was in this unique position that people who knew me from my old life, I was now a heathen. But then, the other people still saw me as religious. So it was like one of my closest friends now. I just freaking love her. I went to high school with her, so I tried hanging out with her when we moved back here so many times, and she was having none of it. And I couldn't, it was a little bit hurtful. And then one time we were, my husband and I stopped into a local bar and had a beer. And again, being Canadian, we're allowed to smoke weed here. So my friend actually her boyfriend saw me, being all sinful and stuff. So he went to her and said, "Hey, they're not religious anymore." And so we got together, and now she's like one of my best friends ever. And she tells me,
amazing.
she used to say, you used to keep inviting me down, but I knew you were religious and you would just think I was crazy.
So I'm hearing that your testimony is still important now. You just have to change it up a little bit.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Well, Catherine, again, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to move on to the conclusion, but if you have a little bit of time, I know it's really late out there in Newfoundland, but if you have a little time, we have a hangout session afterwards, and
Yeah.
you can stay for as long or as little you'd like. I think there's some folks here would love to express how your story has kind of touched them and ask you some follow-up questions or something.
Well, cool. No, I'm definitely going to, I had a coffee earlier, so I'm good until.
Excellent. Well, Kara, what's coming up next week? Because this isn't the last ever RfRx, is it?
It better not be. I'm planning to be here next week, and so is our next guest, David Fitzgerald, who will be telling us about the evolution of God. And all of the major world religions, both Eastern and Western, share more in common than most people realize, and often share the same skeletons in their closets. So in this RfRx, David will discuss patterns in the ways the concepts of God and gods changes over millennia. Drawing upon the scholarship of many historians and social science disciplines, he'll trace out how religious ideas originated and evolved from prehistory to the ancient world to the modern day, and the most surprising discoveries underlying all our religions even today. So definitely looking forward to that one. It sounds really interesting. So be sure and come back, same time, same place, same bat channel and all that. And also another announcement, next week is also the Global Center for Religious Research's 2021 International E-Conference on the Historical Jesus. And our guest, David, will be presenting there on why mythicism matters. And tickets for the entire 2-day virtual event are only $15. And I'm given to understand the lineup is stellar, including Derek Bennett, Richard Carrier, John W. Loftus, David Madison, Frank Zindler, and many more, and Darren Slade as well. So that's on July 24th and 25th. And we'll drop the link to that in the comments. But David wanted us to share that with y'all in case you're interested in visiting that or attending that as well. Should be some similar topics covered there if you want more information on that. So that's all I've got. Looking forward to all of that. Eric, what do you have for us?
Yeah, folks. So at the end of every RfRx, we want to kind of get some feedback from you. And so we've got another poll. Go ahead and fill this out as you see fit. We're not monitoring who answers what. It's totally anonymous. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. Like we talked about at the beginning, all of our previous RfRxs can be found on the YouTube channel. And then if you have any questions or comments or even suggestions for some topics, you can email us at RfRx at recoveringfromreligion.org. You can also find our blog, medium.com. It's a fantastic blog. Guys, if you haven't checked it out, there are some great articles on there. Medium.com/excommunications, and our podcast as well.
So you can also follow us on social media, and that really helps. You know, we have a lot of followers. And we have a Facebook page, which is Recovering from Religion. We also have a support group page, which we're dropping these links in the comments, so feel free to visit all of them. We have Twitter. It's twitter.com/RfRorg. Instagram, it's also RfRorg. And we're also on TikTok. I don't know if we're dancing on there or anything, but because I don't TikTok, but I'm given to understand it's a cool place to be and socialize virtually. So we can now do that. And we also have a newsletter back by popular demand, or maybe for the first time by popular demand. You can find that on our resources page as well, recoveringfromreligion.org/resources #newsletter. And that's where we provide news about RFR, what's going on, any new or recent resources that have come up, recently published videos and blog posts, just so you make sure and don't miss any of the new cool content that comes out that might be interesting or useful to you. And I think Eric is going to tell us about the fall excursion.
Yes, tonight, unfortunately, we don't have Gail or Daryl, and so they're not able to kind of close us out with some thoughts. But what I did want to talk to you about before we sign off or stop the recording and start the hangout is this year we have a fall excursion. We did it in 2019. We weren't able to do it for obvious reasons in 2020, but we're starting it back up again in the fall. And it takes place between September 17th and September 19th. And this is like summer camp, but for adults. And there's going to be campfires. There's going to be hiking. There's going to be some fantastic guests that have some presentations that'll be relevant to all of us at RFR here. Even if you don't want to take part in those discussions or those presentations, it's a beautiful area in North Carolina that we have. It's a lake that we've reserved with a lot of cabins that we're able to stay in. I'm really looking forward to this, and it's going to be a fun time. So some of the guests are former RfRx guests here, like Mandisa Thomas, Candace Gorham, and Alice Gretson are all going to be there as well. So I dropped a link into both of the ACD Discord and here in Zoom. So take a look at that and see if it's something that you want to join in on. It's going to be a ton of fun because I always loved summer camps as a kid. All right, folks. That's going to wrap up this episode of RfRx. Thank you so much for sticking around with us.